Good morning, and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Day 4 with the man Frank SCALISH. It's summertime, and you know what that means. In-depth fishing content and Frank SCALISH in Hawaiian shirts and cats.
And cats.
That was good timing, Frank.
It was perfect. Look at that little face. Look at it.
Now that is...
Lynx.
That is not Bama. That is Lynx. Lynx has not made that many appearances on BTL. So
no. Only when it was a kitten. Once.
No longer a kitten. Like, is there a kitten stage where they're like is it like the puppy stage where it's like, oh my God, they're in the puppy stage. Like they're into everything. Is there a kitten stage? And then where they like settle down and just sleep and do sneaky stuff at night?
Oh yeah. The kitten stage is the reason that nobody kills cats. It's when they become full-grown cats that nobody wants them anymore.
So yeah. Is Lynx out of the kitten stage yet, or is it just still kind of teetering on that edge?
No, she's still in the kitten stage. I'm watching her tip over the garbage can to eat the paper now. So she's into everything.
Huh.
So yeah.
Lovely. All right, we are up against the Bassmaster Elite Series on Smith Lake this morning, Frank. So a lot of and it appears early on though, anything over 2 pounds, gold.
Yeah, that lake could fish like that for sure.
This is a tournament that I think you might get DQ'd in the first 3 hours if you were fishing it, because it is the week before 4th of July on Smith Lake, where like there's not very many wide points and the pontoons and recreational. I do not think you would have enjoyed this derby had you been a contestant in it, Frank.
No, I would have been losing my marbles. I mean, fishing where I live is like that damn near every day. And this weekend, forget about it, because I don't even fish during this time of year. During the 4th of July, I don't even go near the lakes because I can't. I come unglued. The other day go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other day I was out and I had water skiers slaloming literally 6 feet from my boat, where they would carve a turn and spray the water out on my boat almost.
Intentionally, you think they were like, hey, let's mess with this fishing guy?
I'm going to just say no, because they're complete idiots. because here, look, swear to God, I got this water skier, and it was a girl. It was a girl water skier, and her buddy's driving the boat, and they're going back and forth on this stretch I'm fishing. They're going back and forth. Now they're behind me, so I don't really give a crap, except for the fact that you almost fall out of the boat every time their waves roll into the side of the bass boat. But other than that, I don't really give a crap, because the bass in this lake don't really care, because this is everyday occurrence. But then I get the pontooners that have to go around the perimeter of the lake, and they run right over where I'm fishing. Like immediately, I don't have to cast to hit them. I can just do a short pitch and hit the pontoon boat. That's what drives me crazy, because then I got to wait for everything to settle down again. You know what I mean? But that's just how it is. But on the 4th of July, forget about it. You'd have to go out there with your butt seat and a seatbelt to to be able to stand up in the boat.
I had a Frank SCALISH moment in the most recent Bassmaster Open on Lake Eufaula this past week. I finished 50th. I missed a check by 4 ounces. Just one of those deals. Yeah, like I had a good one on. I had like 12 keeper bites in 2 days and went like 11 for 12. It is what it is. I was happy with my decisions, but I specifically thought of you on day one of the event, and I have a diagram that is going to explain what went on, and I'm going to see if I can do this, because I think you'll enjoy this and you'll concur with me. So this was like 10 o'clock or probably 10:30 in the morning on day one. Okay. And I'd returned to the spot that I wanted to catch my fish on, because a bunch of people had started on it. Anyway, long story short, Let's see if I can do this. This is way harder than it looks. All right.
Perfect.
So this is the bank right here. This is a shallow underwater rock shelf that comes out right here. This is like 6 foot of water, this whole thing, 4 to 6 foot. X is a rock pile with a little bit of wood on it that the fish were sitting on. And you could catch them on a drop shot, a jerk bait, or whatever. This is me casting to this in like 6 foot. I'm sitting in like 8. On this side is a dock right here. This is all just open lake, right?
Gotcha.
So from this spot to this spot, you can cast to the bank. And it's like 2 foot of just rubble and boulder and all this stuff, right? So I'm fishing, not thinking anything of it. Like, I mean, this is like probably 3 or 4 casts, this whole thing from this dock. And then there's just like nothing over here. It just goes down on the bank. Complete 100,000, literally 100,000 acres out here. So
I know exactly where you're going.
So I'm fishing this stuff, like no big deal, right? I'm not thinking anything of it. And over here, a pontoon boat comes in, or a jet ski. And it's a dude with like his 2 grandkids on it, I think. And he comes in and he starts out here, and I don't think anything of it. And then he comes like this, and then the jet ski comes like this. And I'm like, that's weird. There's no jet ski lift on this dock right here. Like, it never even occurred to me. And then all of a sudden he starts going like this.
Oh my God.
And he's got the plume of water coming out. I mean, it's 10:30 in the morning on a Thursday. There is not another vessel, boat, anything in sight. This guy, I'm a freaking cast from this. And this guy proceeds to shoot the plume of water as he jet skis directly right within a cast length, completely in front of me with the 2 kids on the back, over like 2.5 foot of water. It was so, I literally just put my rod down and just looked. I think he was completely oblivious.
Yeah,
it was not, I don't think, an intentional thing, but I mean, I didn't say anything. He had kids with him on the back. It was early in the morning. I didn't want to ruin their experience, but the shock level of obliviousness as to what was going on with legitimately 100,000 acres of water behind me and not another vessel on it was mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, it's the most annoying thing on earth to me, and that's how it is fishing here always. I don't understand it, not for a minute. If it wasn't for the kids, that guy would have got a freaking slip sinker to the side of the head.
Oh, that transition was just so smooth. Oh my gosh, that might have been some of your best work yet, Frank.
Outstanding.
Because we're talking about slip stickers today. Did you intentionally do that, or was that did you just have slip stickers on the break?
I did intentionally.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. So while I was struggling to catch a limit, though, I called you to get ready for today's show, and you're like, dude, I absolutely smashed him.
Oh yeah, man. Like you guys got to understand something. We catch a few big fish here. We really do. And a big fish here, it's a 4 to 5 pounder is a big fish. A 6 pound plus is a really good fish.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're lucky enough to catch a 7 pounder, it's a dream fish here. Like where you live, you catch 4 pounders and you're like, oh yeah, it's a 4 pounder. You know what I mean?
In theory, yes.
So you're right. So, but you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So you got to kind of balance it out from what part of the country you're in and what states you're in as to what's a quality bass and what's an average bass. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was, oh my God. Yeah. Oh man, we got a few things to cover too today. Before we get into the details, or do you want to cover them later?
That's your show.
All right. I just don't know what's the best thing to do.
Oh, announce next month's color, because you were showing me that before, but then I realized so we recorded a couple shows because the July is an absolute disaster month as far as travel for me. I've got St. Clair, I've got Thousand Islands. I've got Champlain. I'm all over the board. So we had to knock out a couple. We knocked out a really good one that's going to run during ICAST. But then you were, long story short, we've been up for a while.
Yeah, for a while. That's a good call.
Yeah, but you flashed the bait up, but then we haven't had time to talk about it. So I am interested in the next 600 signature series. It's not on the website yet.
It's not on the website yet. This bait is going to break July 3rd. And you have to remember that this bait is going to, the morning of July 3rd, it becomes available. The reason that we're announcing it now is because we're not going to have a July 4th show. The 4th of July is going to be free for you guys to enjoy cold beverages and, family. So in America. And so we're doing this now, but this color breaks on July 3rd. Was that clear? Was I clear?
Very clear. Crystal clear.
Crystal clear. So the color is called Chartreuse Tiger Craw. And I will take it out of the package right now.
Ooh, I like that.
So we don't get glare. And it's going to be in the deep little N. I got to hide my light here. So,
ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Are we getting
explain it? Yeah. No, it looks good. For the iTunes listeners, walk us through that color pattern.
Okay. So what we have is we have a brownish tan back. We have lime green marbling on the sides over chartreuse with brown dots like crayfish modeling on the sides, and the carapace is a dark brown. It's got an orange tail, and then it has an orange herringbone on the chin.
Ooh, the herringbone's an interesting addition.
Yeah, I like the herringbone. It kind of breaks it up, gives it a little leg feel to it, instead of that bright orange chin and belly like a lot of them have. The herringbone breaks it up real nicely, gives you contrast between the two colors.
600 of them, the same thing, numbered 1 through 600. We're doing this for the 12 months. So one of the cool things that I have noticed has been happening, I've seen it in some of the comments, I've seen it on the instant feedback some, is there's a couple guys who like maybe got 2 or 3 from the first month but missed the second month. There's some guys who got a couple from the second month but missed the first month, and guys are going, hey, do you guys have, do you want the second month? I'll swap you for one for the first month, because we're trying to get as many of these people that you can kind of get the whole set if you want to. So
correct.
If you're listening on YouTube or anything and you've got a couple, you bought 2 of the one but you missed 1 month, there's been some swapping and some trading going on.
Yeah, it's really cool. This is going to be a lot of fun, actually. After the last one releases, this is going to be a lot of fun for the guys that have multiple units, because you could barter, you could trade, you could sell, you could, for guys to complete their sets. Now, I'll be honest with you. I went, unfortunately for me, I went after to get Mossback Craw, and they were gone already. Which kind of annoyed me. I have
I don't have either of them. I'm over.
You're 0 for 2, man. So I have 1 Mossback Craw. I have the Fat Boy 1, and I have this 1, but I got to try to get more. I had more Fat Boys, but I gave Frankie 1 or 2. I gave another guy promised 1, and now I'm down to 1. So,
do we pull up the Don West?
Ready?
Do we pull up the Don West just for
only
a
if
little?
You have the little segment of it, that the money segment.
I've got the money segment that I've talked about.
Pull it up. This guy's out of his mind. This is going to be the Frank SCALISH signature series all the way.
This is going to be you the last week of every month.
I'd be able to buy it $39.99. You're going to look in the mirror, and you know what you're going to see? a loser. You're going to see something that you don't ever want to see. You're going to be a disappointment to yourself. You're going to look in that mirror and you're going to go, what was I thinking? All I had to do was go to wildwestdeals.com and pull the trigger. $39.99. What's wrong with me? Why am I a loser? Why am I worth nothing? Because you didn't buy this for $39.99. You buy this for $39.99. Guess what, folks? You take the L away. You put a W there, baby. You're a winner, man. You're the real deal. You're picking up chicks. Let me tell you something. You buy this set at $39.99, baby. You're the cock of the walk, man. You walk into the bar and you just find the hot chick and you go, you, me. Guess what? She says, why would I go out with you? Because I bought the deal on Wild West Deals for $39.99. That's why. Yes. Can I go home with you? That's how simple it is. No, it works. That's what this set brings to the table. Because you know what she does? She sees a man who knows what he wants. She sees a man who says, good deals don't get by. I move. I act quick. I act now. I go to wildwestdeals.com. Boom. That's why you're hanging with chicks all night long. Guys like Michael Jordan calling you, wanting to hang out with you, baby.
Okay, there we go.
Oh,
we
that
gotta
is so
get
funny, man.
We gotta get some custom color promos rolling, Frank. I'm just saying.
Gosh almighty, that is so funny. Oh, I can't even see now.
We gotta, hey, you pull up to the boat ramp and you got that what a signature series color tied on. Because chicks are jumping off pontoon boats trying to get your bass boat. They're trying to go fishing with you.
Because you're the man.
You know why? Because they said, that's a man I want. He went to lurenet.com and got the Frank SCALISH signature series color. Has that tied on. It's PAL 765.
I don't even understand how you find this stuff, dude. I don't even understand how you find this, man. That is the funniest thing ever. Oh my God, I'm crying. I am so crying.
We could do a couple of really good 30-second promos.
Oh, that would be so much
fun. The
fun.
thing that you did show, so just to clarify, July 3rd, I don't know what time, I have no idea what time they drop it. And there you go. And the code still works.
Yeah, BTL 24.
Capital BTL 24, 50% off of the regular price deal on that.
15% off, yeah.
All right, you're showing me the other custom painted thing, and you didn't even want to show this on the show. I don't know why you didn't want to show this today. You weren't opposed to it, but you were like, We're
going to get into this as we move down the show line. I have a place for it in the interim.
Okay. So we're doing slip sinkers today.
Yeah, I have a really good story that is very, very applicable. It accomplishes a couple of things, okay? It gives you a breakdown of fine-tuning a pattern for specific bites. Mostly this was a big fish pattern that I got on last week at the end of the day. Something occurred. I went home. I left the lake. The last fish I caught was like a 6-pounder. I left the lake. I got home and the bell went off in my head. So I'm like, holy crap. I think I can literally go there and catch nothing but big fish. And so I went back Tuesday and absolutely smothered them. So we're going to get into that. That kind of led to today's show. And basically I want to give you guys I'm going to call it a scientific breakdown on slip sinkers, but it's not really scientific. It's just going to give you
a master's course.
Yeah, it's going to be a deep dive, but it's going to be like, I don't want to say success secrets of the technique, but that's kind of what it is. We're going to break this down here. I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. So those taking notes, here we go. Okay. So part A is going to be called environmental variables. Part B is going to be called our variables. And part C is going to be the Bass's variables. Okay. So we're going to take it from A, B, and C on this. And this is how we're going to do this. Okay. So environmental variables are really pretty simple. It's A, it's what type of cover. Is it grass, wood, rock, etc.? The other environmental variable is going to be depth. How deep are we actually fishing? The third is going to be wind. How windy is it? Is there any at all, or is it like a hurricane? And the last one in the environmental variables is going to be current. How much, if any, current is available? Our variables, okay, are going to be, do we peg the sinker or don't we peg the sinker? That's the one variable. Personally, I always peg a slip sinker unless I'm structure fishing with it, like in open water on gravel or rock. The big question is, how heavy should I go? How much weight do I need? The other variable, the third variable, is line size. This is mostly going to be dictated by how heavy cover you're fishing, or does it hamper the action of your soft plastic? And then the last is going to be rod choices. This is also predicated by technique and cover. So for rod choices, I'm probably going to glaze over that part of this, only because I think we have to do a complete show on rods, because there's so many things that go into that. So I guess and then the last variable is the bass variable. Okay, so here's what we pay attention to. Is the bass on the bottom? Now, you'll know this because when you pitch in there, whatever you're fishing cover-wise, when you throw the thing out there and it hits the bottom, if the fish picks it up when it hits the bottom, he's bottom related. If you're dragging your bait and he picks it up, dragging it or hopping it on the bottom, he picks it up, he's feeding on the bottom. He's looking on the bottom. The other thing you have to realize is the bass suspended in the cover? This is also easy to determine, because if you flip in something, the take is on the fall. He takes it as it's falling. That's how you know it's suspended in that cover. And then it's up to you to figure out, how deep did he take that bait as it was sinking? Because once you get a gauge on where it's at in the water column, you're honing this thing down. You're not wasting a lot of time dragging it out, dragging it through all the cover and banging it on the bottom, because you know that if you pitch in there and he takes it on the fall, that's pretty much how they're going to take it. So, and the other thing is, how close to the surface is the bass? You'll know this, and all of us that fish experience this. You flip out there, and as soon as your bait hits the water, the bass takes it, and you got him. That bass is very close to the surface. All right. Now, when this happens, there probably is a better technique that you can use other than pitching. There's probably a better technique, like a square bill or a spinner bait, if it's windy or off-color water, whatever, that you could go down cover water much faster and more efficiently. That's when the bass is near the surface. So those are the bass's variables that you have to pay attention to. So we're going to break it down. All right. So how heavy of a slip sinker should you use? This is where you have to look at all those variables. Usually, as a rule of thumb, pre-spawn through the spawn, we know the bass are super shallow or relatively shallow. This time of year, you're kind of going to want a slow sink. So it's important to use the lightest slip sinker possible, given the conditions and the cover that you're fishing. I always go lightest. In Florida, I learned this in Florida. If you're too heavy, they don't even look at it. They want it light. They want it floating and hovering as it's falling down. The next thing we got to do, we got to look at our environmental variables. We use a weight heavy enough to get through the cover. That's the general rule of thumb. You have to make sure that you're penetrating the cover object that you're fishing, or you're never getting the bait to the bass. So you got to go heavy enough to get through it. That doesn't mean, if I put a 1 ouncer on, I get right through. That's not what that means. That means if a 3/4, a half, or a 3/8 will get through it, you got to go the lightest possible that you can do to get through it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, we have to also understand when we're doing this, we also have to understand that, using all of these variables combined. So you've got your environmental variables, you got your grass, your wind, we got your bass variables. Are they on the bottom? Are they suspended, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to keep all of this. You have to keep all of this in mind when you're doing this slip sinker rig. So I explained about the Florida game. After the spawn is over, even in Florida, I learned that you want to use the lightest slip sinker you can. And it's not just Florida. It just happens to be when the bass are related to any kind of grass, the slow fall works. Okay. So here's the thing with all of our variables that we talked about the other day, not Tuesday, but before Tuesday, when I said I was dialing in on something, mm-hmm. The bass had not moved to offshore structure. They moved offshore, but they're not on the isolated offshore stuff typical of summer patterns. Okay. They were off the bank quite a ways, but they were still relating to the grass. And mm-hmm. So what happened was I was getting ready to leave. I made a stop and I was cranking outside edges and offshore stuff. And I wasn't catching them. I caught one here and one there. I wasn't really dialing in on it. I kept looking because I wanted to find them where I could catch them on big crankbaits. And it wasn't happening. So later on in the day, I went to the spot. I was scoping. I didn't see any bass on the outside edge. But there was a real definitive grass line on real close to a steep break. It was kind of a little bit windy, kind of getting later. And here's what I had. I had three flipping sticks rigged. I had a 1/4 ounce, a 3/8 and a half. And I had 5 crankbait rods out, loaded up with DD22s, deep little ends, and NXSs. And 1 fat-free shad. And the crankbait thing, I would catch one here and one there and no size. Was getting no size. Well, towards the end of the day, I picked up the 1/4 ounce. I threw it up to the grass edge. It fell down into the vegetation, quit sinking. I pulled it off the vegetation. It started to sink a little bit, landed on top of the next, and I was not getting through the grass. So I picked up the 3/8. The 3/8 was getting through the grass deeper, but I was fishing grass in 9 feet of water. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't getting through the grass. I picked up the 1/2 ounce. I pitched it up there and I got through the grass. The thing hit the bottom and my line tightened up and I leaned on her and it was a 6-pounder.
Good Lord. That's a big
And I'm like, holy crap. So the day was winding down for me. So I was getting my stuff together and the boat was blowing in the wind. I didn't hit spot lock. I didn't care. I was leaving. So I was taking all the crankbaits off, putting them away, doing my thing. And as I drifted over the grass, I just kind of looked over the side to see the grass, the color, everything. And I noticed that some of this grass was like green pumpkin-y brown, and some of it was green. And I noticed that the really vibrant, bright green stuff was new grass. So I didn't think much of it at the second. I saw that, picked up, launched, took the boat, left, went home. When I got home, I was thinking about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I figured this out. I have to go back. And so Tuesday I went back but Tuesday, the one variable, the environmental variable that was different Tuesday was we had over 20-mile-an-hour winds for the better part of the day. I mean, it was brutal for boat control, and I couldn't see in the water. So it was really tricky to be able to see the different color of grass. It was really tricky. Well, I had went to my first spot. There was a guy that came out and cut me off on it, so I just left. I went to my second spot. Another guy was drifting, and then he shifted his drift, and he drifted into me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went like that, and I left. I said,
gave him the what the heck arms.
Yeah, I gave him the
just where you toss your arms up.
Right.
Yeah.
Hallelujah, brother. You can have it.
Yeah.
So I decided, since I knew what I knew from the few days earlier, I'm going to start from scratch. And I ran all the way down the lake. And then I turned around and I started going to places that I was using the structure as my guide, because the thing that I noticed was they wanted a steeper break to the terrain, not so much a steeper break because of the grass. It didn't matter if the grass edge was hard, if it was a gradual slope and a hard edge. That's not what you were looking for. You were looking for the contours of the lake to drop. Anyhow, the long and short of it is, I go run down the lake. I just literally, I get on the trolling motor, crank it up, and I start cruising, and I'm looking, and I'm using my forward facing sonar because I'm following the grass edge. And if the bottom's like this, when I turn the trolling motor, if the bottom's like this, I keep on moving. If the bottom goes like that, then I stopped. And I stopped and I started looking, and I could see bright, not bright because it was so windy, but I could see lighter shades of green and darker shades of green. So I saw the lighter shades of green. I turned the boat out, spot locked it, got on the back deck so I could pitch in there. I knew I needed to half because I couldn't get to the base of the roots of the weeds, because that's where the bass were at. At least that's where the bigger bass were at. Okay. So I went out there, and the first green stuff I found, I caught a 4-pounder, like on my 10th cast. Now the problem
I was right.
Right, 100%. The problem with the wind was I couldn't see the pockets around the grass to actually pitch in the pocket. So what made my job more difficult was I had to cast, and I had to bring the bait, work the bait back into the areas where I thought that the bigger bass were at. So it slowed everything way down, but it was insanely effective. And I went to places in this lake that I never even went to before and caught them. The pattern was so dialed in. It's a rarity when this occurs, when you have it so figured out you can't miss. And this is how this day was for me. And it was simple. I had literally one rod out the entire day. One rod in a bag of plastics, basically. And I just went meticulously around this lake, and all I did was look for what I knew I had to find. Okay, so here's the thing. All of the vegetation, this lake has 4 types of grass in it. It's got milfoil, coontail, cabbage grass, and eelgrass. Most of the lakes, as you go north, most of the lakes will have all 4 of those or 3 of those. And so what I found out was that the milfoil and the coontail wasn't grown enough. The bass weren't using it. Usually that's what I'll target on any grass lake. If I could find coontail or milfoil, I'm on it. it wasn't growing good enough. The bass were not using it. They were using the cabbage grass, which is a nightmare because it's everywhere. Okay. It's so like curly leaf pondweed. It's everywhere. So you have to. So I found the differences in these patches of grass where the older grass that had been growing since ice out was green pumpkiny brownish color. The newer shoots were green, like more vibrant, and the bass were gravitating towards the newer areas. Now I've experienced this also where they wanted the brown grass. So you have to pay attention. It's just about eliminating your variables. The key was the 1/2 ounce. Heavier, I couldn't get bit. Lighter, I couldn't get bit. The key was the 1/2 ounce. The bait choice, I threw the Yum Money Craw, to be honest with you. That was just it's one of my favorite baits. I just put it on and threw it. Will other craws work? I'm almost 100% sure of it. Will other colors work? Probably. But this was working for me, so I didn't feel like switching. I was dialed in, and I kept the drive alive. I didn't waste time with nothing. I posted some pictures on Instagram the other day over it, and some guy made a comment. Well, not some guy, a bunch of people made comments about my slip sinker that I painted it to match the bait. So I decided I would show it to you.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's Bama Magic or Magic
Okeechobee
Cross
Craw.
Or Okeechobee Craw, depending on whose brand you're throwing. Do I do this to all my slip sinkers? No, to be honest with you, most of the time the only color slip sinker I throw is green pumpkin because it works on black, it works on every color, it doesn't matter. And I throw green pumpkin. I just don't want the damn slip sinker shiny and metal. To be honest with you, I used to paint all my slip sinkers the color of every plastic that I threw, and that became a job. And I'm like, this is ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous to do that. So I just narrowed it down to 2 colors of slip sinkers, green pumpkin or black. And that's the only color slip sinkers I ever throw. And I don't think it matters. I just don't want it metal. And conversely, I have a buddy of mine that leaves them all metal and he polishes them. So they're shiny.
He wants it shiny.
Yeah, he wants it shiny. And he catches them too. So, I don't know if the slip sinker matters all that much.
Now in Oklahoma, the only time I've heard you really want a shiny one is when you're when the water's up in the late spring and there's a shad spawn in the bushes and you're flipping. Like the kind of low-key secret is you want a polished weight because those fish are up there gorging on the shad that are in the bushes. But that's a very specific
that's a very,
scenario.
very specific scenario. I just got a text from a guest on our next show.
Oh, okay.
All right. I don't know what he's saying. Oh, okay. I know what he's saying.
Do you have your Texas rig weight box?
No, I didn't even grab it. I didn't even grab it.
So like talk about just on the daily, like what are the weights that you will always have with you 365, like from how light to how heavy?
Okay. So I have 3/32 all the way to 1 ounce. I carry every size. I carry 3/32. I carry 1/16, 1/8, 1/4, 3/16, 5/16, 3/8, halves, 3/4, and 1 ounce. And the reason that I carry all the weights is because if I'm fishing a bite where I need a slow fall, especially springtime with Yum Dingers and Senkos, I found that if I peg a 3/32 or if I peg a 1/8, I get a slower fall to it. The 3/32, the dinger kind of swims. The 1/8, it's a little harder, but it still darts to the right or darts to the left on the fall. Once I get to the 3/16, it's more like this on the dinger. So in the springtime, I like the lighter weights. Like in Florida, I had a really good finish on Okeechobee, and I was using 3/32 and a 1/16 and a 1/8. But I was pitching super flukes back then.
And then you just wanted to get that nose down.
Right. I just wanted the nose down because a lot of the bass were spawning.
Mm-hmm.
And the key was the mother-in-law tongues. And that here again, this is all about your variables that I keep talking about. The mother-in-law tongues grew in about 1.5 to 3 feet of water. The bass spawn right against the base of them. Okay. It's hard against the base. They spawn right there. They got cover on the side of them. So they only have to guard the nest, partially around. They don't have to guard it 360 degrees. When I figured that out, I needed a bait that was going to annoy them enough to think that something's pecking at their food, but I couldn't have something that goes right down because anywhere around there is usually mud. The mother-in-law tongues will grow in a harder bottom area, but they'll root in the harder bottom, but you're going to have sediment, and the heavier slip sinker went down into the sediment and literally would bury the whole bait. And so I went to the lighter one because it would keep it on top of the sediment and kick up the little dust cloud.
That's fantastic. So my first open ever was on Ross Barnett.
Okay.
And I ended up in a community hole area where everybody was flipping or dragging pad stems that were
the old
emergent.
Gotcha.
You could see the clumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd never done this. I didn't know anything of it. So I was flipping the pad stems, and I had 2 bites all day. And I was flipping a 3/8 ounce, very standard.
Right.
I literally watched 30 boats around me doing the same thing, culling. And it drove me freaking nuts. And I talked to one of the guys after the tournament, and I said, dude, I saw you over there culling. He goes, what was the deal? And he was throwing a mag lizard with a 1/8 ounce weight because every single year those pads would die and the sediment
builds up,
and the fish would sit at the very little base, just like the mother-in-law tongue as they prepared to spawn, where there'd be like a little dish saucer size hard spot, and everywhere around that was 6 inches of crap.
Yep. And
if you didn't have a 1/8 ounce, your bait would literally just go zoop and completely disappear and be gone. And you had a 2-foot window for that fish to eat it from the time it hit the water to the time it got to it. And if you didn't, it was literally a slip sinker weight that was the difference between a limit and a great day. And I mean, I watched guys blister them and could not figure it out, but I was green, and it never occurred to me because I flipped with the 3/8. And it was then that I realized after that I need to carry from an 8 all the way up to a 2 ounce.
Right. And you never forgot that, did you?
No, I mean, it was a blistering of epic proportions.
So we were on the Red River, and every time I fish the Red River, I've got 8th place finishes or better, except for one tournament. I think I finished 20th or 30th on. But the one time I was there, it was the same scenario. I ran to, okay, so we're going to break down variables and slip sinker weights and everything else. So I ran to this backwater area, and there were cypress trees in the middle, which is stupid to say if anyone's ever been to the Red River because they're freaking everywhere. But the key feature that I was focusing on were the old river channels and drains, because the cypresses were growing on the high spots and the deeper cypresses were the ones that had the fish in them. So I was fishing the deeper cypresses, and I was using a 1/4 ounce. And I think at the time I was throwing a full-size brush hog. And every couple of cypress trees, I would get a good one. It was very random and very haphazard. I could tell that what I was fishing, the fish were leaving where I was going. It was springtime, and they were going to the bank. And I can just tell, because you can't go to one tree and catch one, fish 10 other ones and not catch one, and then maybe catch another one later. You're behind them at that point. So I found an area in the same backwater that I was fishing that had it had like 3 channels that came out of it. And one channel was closer to the bank. So I said, I got to go to the channel that's on the bank. And I went there, and it was all dead lily pads and bulrushes. And I noticed behind the bulrushes was a big open water area that you couldn't access. You couldn't get through the bulrushes over all the fallen trees to get back to it. But that doesn't mean the bass can't go back there, because I'm 100,000% positive it was a spawn factory back there. I couldn't get back there. So I was fishing the flat where the river channel dropped in the flat up to that point. Okay. Well, it was shallower. I was fishing lily pad stems and bulrushes, and I went to a 3/16 ounce slip sinker and an 1/8 ounce, and went to a smaller baby brush hog. And my non-boater and I must have caught 100 bass doing that day. And we fished probably a 70-yard stretch back and forth. And if you went heavier than a 3/16, because I put the big brush hog on the 3/16 to slow the fall down, and put the little one on the 1/8. So I had 2 different sizes, but the same descent rate. Okay. That was the whole difference. And my non-boater, same thing, Matt. He's like, how the hell are you catching all these fish? Because I was crashing them. And I said, go to a lighter slip sinker. And he put the light slip sinker on, and he started catching them. And we actually were doubling up on some occasions. We both cast out there, boom, boom, boom. So what happened was, I recognized the fish were moving into spawn. I got off the middle, got to a channel bank, that had a small ditch running next to it. The fact that the backwater area behind where I was fishing was like a funnel, and I knew the bass were going back there to spawn. It was like manna from heaven. For 3 days, those bass just kept coming in there and coming in there and coming in there. And if you were a kayak fisherman and you got in that backwater that you could not access with a bass boat, you would have probably had one of the best fishing days of your life, because those bass were going there.
I feel like you should have run it on Pat.
Oh, dude, there was fallen trees everywhere, Matt, because I tried everything. Yeah, I tried everything in practice to get back to it. I could not. There was only one access point where you could see the water. Everything else around it was land. You couldn't even see the water. So it was, oh man, it was psycho. It was absolutely psycho. But again, paying attention to you could go out, have too heavy of a weight on, or conversely, too light of a weight, and go, they're not here, and fish through an area, and you just fished over, a catch winning.
Now, the beautiful thing also about the forward-facing sonar, which a lot of people have, if you don't have it, you can, you're experimenting, right? But but one thing is, there's no doubt about it. You can see how the fish react in most cases, especially if you can see them. And one of the things that I do, I did it in this past open on Eufaula. I think I caught some fish. I was going to a heavier weight slip sinker on the docks because the fish were suspended, and if something floated down to them, they didn't really want to come up to eat it. And if it went shoom right past the post, I would see on scope a lot of the bigger fish would go, and they wouldn't always eat it, but they would go shoom straight down to it. So that was a difference where, like, a 1/4 ounce that I started with a big piece of plastic kind of floated down enough to where they would just kind of slide off of the post. But if I went to a 1/2 ounce or a 5/8, I could get a lot more of a reaction bite for those summertime fish that would shoot down to look at it. And it was a pure reaction bite on it. And I feel like I got some more bites specifically because I went to a heavier, when in theory, you got suspended fish that are, 5 foot down over 12 foot of water. You would think, hey, well, let's get in something slow to them.
Something to keep. Exactly.
But you were able to see them react to that heavier deal too.
Right, which is cool, which is really cool. Forward-facing sonar is teaching me a lot.
Yeah.
But
if you don't have it, it's one of those things where, like you said, you put a 3/16, a quarter, a 3/8 and a half, and you pitch docks, and you just keep
got to
alternating and flip it until you get a biter, and you notice where that bite came from. And like you said at the beginning, was it on the bottom? Was it on the hop? Was it suspended?
Right.
And then pretty soon you'll get to a point where you're like, there's clearly a preference for a 1/2 ounce over a 1/4 ounce, and now you're dialing it in.
Right, 100%. So basically, what it amounts to is just look at your 3 base variables: your environmental variables, our variables, and the bass's variables. If you look at those 3 things, and then you analyze each of the characteristics of each one of those, you'll be able to dial it in. And this isn't going to be like a study course on the water for you. It's going to be instantaneous almost, because you're going to understand, okay, where's the bass? What am I fishing? What's my pound test line? What's my fall rate going to be? Do I need to get it past them? Do I need to float it through them? Like you said, Matt, are they chasing something down, or do they want it just gliding past their face? Mostly what I found is that in the spring is when they want it gliding past their face a lot. That's really, what I found, except for there's certain grass lakes where if you're fishing a petering grass edge, and what I call a petering grass edge, and we've done grass shows before, it's gradually sloping. It just meanders its way down a very gradual sloping bank. That's generally when I'm using a lighter weight. If you have a blowdown with no branches on it, for example, you could get away with a much lighter weight. You could get it, and it could creep down, and the bass will usually put something over their head, especially in blowdowns. Leaners with the big Y branches on them, they'll usually get right underneath the branch, and they sit underneath the branch. And so you want something, that's going to go by them, but it's not going to go where they not going to react to it. But if it's floating down, all they do is turn around, reach out, and grab it. You know what I mean? So you go ahead.
It's perfect what you're just describing. Keep going. I got an example when you're done with it on an exact pattern that I was given.
Do it.
Okay, so we were fishing Watts Bar. Lots of laydowns, brutally tough bite, and Andrew Upshaw and I share information, but not specifics, right? Not like here is the exact thing. He said, "Hey, I'm getting some bites on a baby brush hog on laydowns on the main lake." So that's fairly specific, right? I said, okay, cool. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
So I put on a brush hog, and I start flipping laydowns, and I'm not getting many bites. So that night I said, well, how many are you getting? He's like, I don't know, 20, 25 bites a day. I said, are you kidding me? I said, I flipped those things for hours. I said, and I wasn't getting very many. And it was funky time of the year, right? Well, and he let me know this before the tournament, so I was able to fix it. But I mean, he didn't just give me the goods right off the bat. Well, he was floating that sucker on an 1/8 ounce weight and 20-pound test, and he was flipping it up in like 2 foot of water. And as he drug it over the individual limbs like that, I'm assuming they thought it was a bluegill or something, and those suckers would come up and eat it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I put a lighter weight on, and I started getting bit doing that stuff too. But it was the same style of laydowns in the exact same place with the same bait, the same rod, reel, line, everything. It was just a difference because I'm notoriously bad for starting out with a 1/2 ounce. Just it's easy to cast. You can skip it. You can make long pitch. It's just It's way easier to use a half ounce than an eighth. It's just a matter of fact. Cat, you don't get the backlash. Everything's smooth. You just shoo. But that was a case where it was a 10-to-1 bite ratio just on changing the weight of the bait.
Yeah. I learned that a long time ago on the Ohio River. That's really where I started keying in on it, because there, back in the old days of horse and buggies, we fish shallow, like I'm talking, knee deep stuff, because there was nothing available except that. Until the grass started growing later, but that's a different story. So that's all we had to fish. So what we were doing is we were literally using 1/16 ounce weights and 1/8 ounce weights and 3/32 ounce weights. And it was a painful pile of garbage to fish like that, because if it had a lot of branches on it, you'd have to feather it through the branches. You'd have to make sure that bait had a fall rate to it. It was a pain, but if you used a heavier one, you couldn't get a bite. And so that's where I, realized that heavy's not always better, even though it's way easier to fish. All right. So you have to go through those three variables, and it'll tell that those variables will tell you what you need to know when you're doing it. And it's not hard, because most of us have, if you're catching them pitching, most of you'll have 2 or 3 pitching rods on the deck.
Yep.
And so how hard is it to just put a different weight on each one? It's not like, here, look, color matters, but most of the time you already know what colors you're throwing on the lakes, especially if you live on the lake. You already know what, that color range is. A brand new body of water, sight unseen, with today's knowledge that's available to you, you could pretty much look at the watercolor and go, oh yeah, black and blue. Oh yeah, green pumpkin. Oh yeah, watermelon. You know what I mean? You could pretty much get that through. So you could rig your different slip sinker weights and start out, if you go to a blowdown, start out with the light one, and then throw the heavier one, and then get heavier yet, you know what I mean, until you get bit. Because on a blowdown, the bass is on the blowdown. He's on the blowdown. Because you didn't catch it doesn't mean it wasn't there. So that would be a really good gauge to check it out. A really easy way. 3 flips and you know if the fish are there or not.
This Elite Series at Smith is a really good example of weight and speed generating bites. Spotted bass, late June, early July, reaction bite, feeding bites, heavy, you know what I mean? Like it's just a suspended fish. Just a good example of that.
Well, and these, the variables, the 3 variables that I talked about in adjusting weight accordingly, ironically enough, that works for scoping too with your minnow heads. Because like you said, you could see the reaction of the bass. So you'll know if you need a heavier head because they want the bait faster, or a lighter head because they want it slower, or if the wind's blowing hard, you need a heavier head to get the same fall rate as a lighter jig head. You can use this for anything that involves a weight. It's not just for slip sinker fishing. You could use it for anything that involves a weight, which is really kind of cool about that system.
It is.
Go ahead.
No, that's what I say. It is. It just reduces the time and learning curve when you can see the fish react. That's the only difference there is. Everything you talked about, you can do from the bank, out of a kayak, absolutely. Out of a freaking canoe.
Yeah, 100%. Here, the reality of it is, the other day, the only thing I used live scope for was to make sure I was on the right break.
Yep.
That's all I used it for.
Which beforehand, I mean, we've done a million shows on how you go down it with side imaging and you drop your waypoints. And then when you go up to the front, you have your waypoints on the break. So you know that you're following. It's just not as... Right,
because here's the deal. The spots that I already knew that I already fished, I already side imaged them. I already knew what was down there. I already had my waypoints on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what key areas I needed to go to. The spots in the lake that I never fished before, it was just, I was just going blind, and I was literally watching my 2D and my scope. And my 2D was telling me everything. Live scope was telling me, but live scope was telling me before I got to it. 2D was telling me once I was on it. And then I could just keep the boat where I needed to keep it, you know, to pitch in. And the wind was so bad that I had to spot lock it and then jump to the back of the boat to fish. So then I would just turn around and look at my dashboard unit on 2D to make sure that my boat wasn't over what I needed to be fishing, so that I was still on that break. So it kind of, you know, so to do this, you don't need live scope. You don't. You just need to use your eyes and watch your locators.
I've never understood this. Okay. Why this doesn't make sense to me. This is unrelated. Mr. Dustin Fisher, Matt, have you done or can you do a show on right or left hand retrieve attempting to go left, and it's a nightmare? So what he's talking about, that's what, because then you don't have to switch your hand, or then you don't ever have to take your hand off of the reel, is what he's saying. So if you you know, you flip like this and then you switch, or whatever it is where you switch, I have always thought, you know, so you cast right-handed, right? Right-handed retrieve is what 90% of people are with their bait caster. You cast with your right arm, then you move it over to your left, you work it with your left and reel it in with the right. And you're talking about that transition of the right to the left. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys say, well, just switch to the left-handed reel so you don't have to take your hand off of it. Now, to me, this has never made sense, because you grow up and you learn the feel, you learn the action, you learn everything with one arm specifically on how you work the bait.
It 100%.
So now you change it, and that's like taking a guy who's not a switch hitter, putting him on the left side of the boat, changing your hockey stick to left-handed. I mean, it is bona fide like a monkey humping a football.
Oh, it's crazy.
So you're not and then it doesn't feel right. I've never understood why the focus, instead of switching your reels, hasn't been learning how to flip with your offhand. So now everything stays the same. Everything stays the same. It feels normal. The reel feels normal. The weight, everything. You're just learning to flip with your offhand, and now you don't have to switch reels. You don't have to do anything.
Right. So I can actually cast either handed. It's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. I can do both. Now,
if I'm skipping a jig around a dock, I'm casting with the right and then switching hands. Mm-hmm. If I'm just flipping basic cover, I mean, I'm very proficient at flipping with my left hand.
Same
but if
here.
it's an intricate cast, I'm switching and just get over it. But I mean,
and here's the funny thing. Most of the time you do the switch, a lot of times before the lure has any chance of doing anything to catch a bass.
And in the times that it does, in my opinion, which is when you're short flipping, when you're in grass or heavy cover, those are the easiest pitches to make with your offhand.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I don't play with I have buddies of mine that did the switch reels and all that crap. Mm-hmm. I didn't play with that too much, because I'll be honest with you. I like to buy spare spools for my reels, so I don't have to re-spool a rod. I can just put another spool in there if I need to change line diameter, or even in the tournaments, like in Bassmasters, I would have spools pre-rigged that I did after practice on spare spools. Then I would practice with my rods, and then after practice I would just pop the spare spools in there. It saved me time rather than re-spool 14 rods. It saved me time. So my prep time shortened up on me, you know what I mean? And then I keep spare spools in the boat and just pop the spool on. Like here, there's a crazy shad bite that I love in the spring, and I throw it on 20-pound braid with a 14-pound mono leader. Okay. So I have the spool with 20-pound braid on it in my boat. So I don't have to carry a reel rig specifically for one technique that I'm going to use 3 weeks out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I do it, I just pop the spool in and I'm ready to go. It's effortless. Effortless.
It's a good question, though.
It is a good
I've never understood that. Remember, that was probably 15 years ago. There was like a big push of,
oh yeah,
flip with a left-handed reel and do everything else with a right-handed. And I mean, I got a left-handed reel. I tried it. I mean, could not. I mean, I'm either. I feel like I'm fairly athletic. Yeah, I played like college hockey and stuff.
That's
not
pretty
like
athletic.
Division I, but I'm a fairly athletic, ambidextrous person. Now, the only person who can do it is Jeffries. Like Jeffries has left and right and all that, but he's also bowled. He was also the third person ever to bowl a perfect game left and right-handed. So I think we're dealing with a freak show when it comes to that. Like that,
right? It's not the norm.
Yeah,
there's nothing. If you can do it, there's nothing wrong with it.
I agree.
I just don't want to add variables to my mix. I want to keep my decision making real easy. That was crazy. We went off on that. Poor guy. He's never going to ask another question again.
No, it was good. It was a legit question. I don't think it was a bad question. Let me go back and make sure I didn't.
I love this. Everybody that knows me everyone that knows me in the free world knows that Thursdays at this time we are live.
And they still call it. No, I don't think it was bad. He said, have you done or can you do a show on left or right? Attempting to go left, and it's a nightmare. I think we're both agreeing with him. Yeah, it's absolute nightmare. Just learn how to flip with your left hand.
It's so easy.
And start with a heavier weight, 1/2 ounce, 5/8, 3/4, and start with easy targets. And it's just, I mean,
yeah,
I'm not like if I'm making a cast, I am still always right-handed and switch. But you switch when it's in the air. It's it doesn't even. I don't think it makes any impact whatsoever. The only time it is are flipping and pitching to targets, where that fish hits it as soon in the transfer, and you can just literally just go doom 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 instead of completely transferring. And that I think you can get comfortable with in a month.
Oh, easy. Not even a month. Just probably.
Good. He's not upset. You got me feeling bad there for a second, like us.
Oh, good. Dustin,
we're not badgering him.
We're not badgering you, my man. We're badgering the idea of getting a million different reels.
But I mean, if that works for some people, I mean, if you're ambidextrous, if you're more talented, if it doesn't make a difference and you want to do that, then do that.
Right. It's just whatever.
But I mean, if I go around docks and I try to pitch like accurately with my wrong hand with the reel on the other side, like I will have some angry homeowners.
Yeah. And how many times when you were trying to go to the left hand, how many times did you try to retrieve on the handle to side with no handle?
It just doesn't. The weight is off. I mean, you literally like, no. So I spinning rod like a normal human being. I have the spinning rod on the left hand. The spinning rod on the right. But that's because, I mean, from the time I was a kid, like I've always, this is how you move your bait. This is your connection to what's below the water. This is how like the first thing I'll do if it's a left-handed spinning reel and I'm in someone else's or right-handed spinning reel is switch it to the left. But I also have guys who get in the boat and immediately switch it to the right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Me too. It's okay. I mean, whatever you do, you can do. As long as it's comfortable for you, you'll fish better.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty wild.
All right, Frank. Let's get some music here. What do we have?
We are we are doing another show.
Yeah, no, as I said, we're knocking it out. We're earning the money, but it's a really good show. So we're recording a show. No show next week on the 4th of July. Frank's third signature series paint job drops on LureNet on July 3rd.
Yes. Please don't miss out on that. July 3rd.
Why not, Frank? Give us your best sales pitch on that one.
I can't even do that, guy.
Yeah, take that L. Take
Because
that
you're
L,
a
and if you get
loser.
into 600, you're now a winner.
That's
You're a
right.
winner.
Turn it into a W.
You're gonna walk into the tackle shop, and all the chicks are gonna be like, "That guy has the Frank Scalish signature series. I want to go fishing with him."
Hey, on July 11th, we're gonna have a early ICAST release.
Absolutely. Dan from Great Lakes Finesse
with some new stuff, new cool.
It's
stuff.
really cool. I got my hands on it.
You're so
You're
lucky.
actually a little jealous because. So here's what happened. We'll tell. I'll tell what happened. I ain't scared. I'll turn the music off for a second. So
yeah, go for it.
I talked with Dan, and I guess I've got this big northern swing coming up, and we're gonna do the show that's gonna air on the 11th. So I'll send you all the new stuff so you have it for the show.
Right.
Blah blah blah. I'm like, okay. So it comes, and there's two boxes of Great Lakes Finesse stuff. I don't even think anything of it. I'm like, oh, sweet. That's awesome. We got it for the show. So I, X-Acto knife box, each box open, dump it all out on the kitchen table. And I'm in a major organizational phase of my life where I'm like going through and making sure everything is
good for
pristine,
you.
Right?
I like that.
Fishing tackle, not life. A
You gotta start somewhere, Matt.
So I just dump everything out, start organizing it, putting it all together, and I'm like, awesome. I noticed there's some similar things in the boxes. It didn't even cross my mind. So then I have the packing sheet. So I'm looking at the packing sheet, and it's Matt, blah blah blah, my address, and one of them says Frank Scalish BTL on it, and one of them says Matt Pengrak BTL on it. And I'm like, that's weird. So then I look at the back of the packing sheets, and I'm like, wait a second, these are identical
packing slips.
Yeah. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So I go to the back, and the weight is 1.08675 pounds for each box. And I'm like, crap, I got two of the exact same boxes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I don't think that's it. So I called you and I said, hey Frank, have you gotten the new drop yet? You're like, no, I'm waiting on it. And I was like, well, you're going to be waiting a couple more days.
Exactly.
But the packing slip was at the bottom of the box, right? So it wasn't like I didn't look at the packing slip. I already organized everything. And then, so I texted and I was like, hey, I think I might have screwed this up. I was like, this will take me 3 hours to organize all this stuff again, because there's
it's easy
850 SKUs. But so yours is on the way.
Yes, it is on the way
with the new stuff. And there's the new color there. July 3rd.
July 3rd, guys. Chartreuse Tiger Craw. Deep little
I think the music needs to come back, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. All right, this has been another edition of BTL. Day 4 with Frank Scalish. No show next week. Enjoy the 4th of July if you're in the United States. And then isn't July 1st Canada Day?
Well, happy Canada Day to all our Canadian
I think it is, isn't it?
I don't know, but we're going to say it anyway.
Yeah. Monday, July 1st is Canada Day. So happy Canada Day to a lot of our Canadian listeners who can celebrate by purchasing now on LureNet, which is shipping to Canada. And then the 4th of July, I hope everybody stays safe and healthy and happy and gets to spend time with families and eat a dozen glizzies and just enjoy being American.
Just grilling and chilling, baby. I got all my kids coming home for the 4th of July.
Oh my gosh, the Scalish household is going to be chaos.
It's going to be ludicrous. Then they're all bringing their significant others, girlfriends, boyfriends, wives. It's going to be a lot.
How many bedrooms do you have? You've got a 6-bedroom historic house, so it goes way up.
It goes way up.
Lynx isn't going to know what the heck to do. Lynx is going to be hiding under the couch.
Yeah, we're going to fill every room in the house, but there's plenty of room. It's going to be very crazy.
All right, we'll be back on July 11th.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yes. For the new GLF releases.